Alright, let's do this. So, Smash Ultimate clocks in at a whopping 89 fighters. This is absurd for any video game, especially a fighting game, to have a roster this large. So absurd, in fact, that the game's director Sakurai has basically confirmed that we're never going to see this many characters in a Smash game again. With that said, who's not making the cut? And how many characters are going to be getting the axe? Well, let's be dramatic here and cut a whopping 45 characters from the roster down to 44, pretty much splitting the roster completely in half. Now, before you say it, this is not my video idea. A lot of other creators have made this video before, but with the Nintendo Switch 2 to be confirmed existing somewhat in the near future, I think now is a pretty decent time to discuss this topic. So, where exactly should we start with cutting this roster? Well, I think the first thing we should do is reframe our mindset. Instead of cutting 45 fighters, let's build up to 45 fighters and start with a completely clean, empty roster to look at. So, who is first on adding in our hypothetical roster? Well, even though Smash 6 likely won't have as much Legacy Series content as Smash Ultimate, I still think we should view Smash as a Legacy Series. Smash itself has an identity that stretches beyond just Nintendo All-Star Fighting Game, and I think there are 12 obvious characters that define this legacy. Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Captain Falcon, Kirby, Ness, Fox, Pikachu, and Jigglypuff are absolutely making it in our roster. Sure, some series like F-Zero, Star Fox, and Earthbound really aren't as popular as they used to be. However, the original Smash 64 roster is beyond iconic at this point, and it would really just be weird to see a Smash game without characters like Falcon, Fox, and Ness, even if their own individual series aren't that popular. It's kind of like saying a Street Fighter game without seeing a Ryu, Ken, or a Chun-Li or something. It's just really, really odd. So I really think those three characters need to stick around. I will say that Puff was probably the closest of the original 12 characters not to make the cut here. However, it would be a little awkward to cut just one out of the original 12 characters, so she's going to be sticking around as well. Let's continue to talk about some classic Nintendo era franchises and discuss Little Mac. Yes, Punch-Out I think is a huge IP for Nintendo, even if it's not so relevant right now. If we're looking at just one representation for the classic Nintendo Entertainment System era, I think Little Mac would be my personal pick, because having a fighting game boxing character be a series representation for all that just makes way too much sense to me. I will also include Kid Icarus and Pit here as well. I know Pit has kind of had a weird series revitalization recently, but I really don't think Nintendo has a lot of plans for Kid Icarus in the future. Unfortunately, I like to be proven wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I still do think we need to keep Pit in the roster to at least show some respect to the work that Sakurai put into revitalizing Pit as a character way back in Brawl and even making a Kid Icarus game on the 3DS. I think it would at least be very respectful to Sakurai if he is or is not the next director to include Pit on the next Smash roster. But let's pivot here for a second and discuss some of the series that Nintendo is most definitely having a lot of plans for in the future. First off, Animal Crossing is massive, so I think Villager is very, very easily making it into the roster. I'm a little unsure about Isabelle because she is just so similar to Villager, but for now I think we're just going to include only Villager. Pikmin 4 was fantastic, so of course we're going to be keeping Olimar as a representation for the Pikmin series. Inkling is another no-brainer here. Splatoon is a huge, massive Nintendo franchise, so she's going to be sticking around for sure. Xenoblade was a huge deal for the Nintendo Switch generation, so I think we're going to keep both Shulk and Pyra. That's right, we're just going to be keeping Pyra and not Mythra. We've seen characters like Pokemon Trainer be split up before in Smash 4 with just Charizard, so I could really see this happening again, and I think Pyra is the obvious choice between the two. Hopefully her moveset kind of gets reworked to be a combination of both Mythra and Pyra and kind of balances the character out in a sort of way, so that's my personal idea for how they could adjust Pyra and Mythra moving forward, to just combine them into one solid character instead of two different characters within one character spot. And another last minute inclusion I had on this roster is going to be Min Min. We don't really know Nintendo's future plans for ARMS. We don't really know if they're going to be doing another title in this franchise at all ever again, but I really think it's kind of a big deal to have ARMS as a representation for the early Nintendo Switch era. It just is a very interesting time in Nintendo's life, and having a unique character like Min Min on the Smash roster is kind of nice. I know people aren't a huge fan of the character and her playstyle, but with some tweaking, I still think this character can be really interesting and really fun to keep around on the Smash roster moving forward. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to modern Nintendo titles, Fire Emblem. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do with the Fire Emblem roster, as it's extremely bloated right now in my opinion, so let's just get down to it. First off, Marth is sticking around as an absolute no-brainer. Next, Robin is going to be sticking around as well. They represent such a great revival of the series and also have an interesting moveset that sets them apart from the other Fire Emblem characters. Lastly, it's going to be Byleth. That's right, I said lastly, 3 fighters for the entire Fire Emblem series. I think if we're seriously reducing the amount of Fire Emblem characters, I think we can need to go down to 3. Robin and Byleth both have very interesting and fun movesets that I think would be pretty interesting to set them apart as other characters like Lucina or Roy, who already have their moveset kind of represented by just having Marth in the roster. So I really think that these 3 characters make the most sense if we're cutting down the Fire Emblem roster so dramatically. So we've talked about Xenoblade and Fire Emblem, but we still haven't even talked about, Mario as a series, so yeah, let's probably get around to doing that. Bowser and Peach are both obviously making it onto the roster. Wario can be included here as well, but I don't think we're going to be including Piranha Plant, Bowser Jr., or Rosalina. I will take Daisy though. Okay, look, I know that is super weird because Daisy is kind of an echo fighter, but Daisy right now is a huge staple for modern Mario and the way that Mario has evolved so much as a series. She's even made herself present in Super Mario Wonder. So of course, I really do hope we see some sort of moveset rework for the character as well, but regardless, I do think Daisy should stick around. And while we're on the topic of Mario and whatnot, let's go ahead and talk about Diddy Kong. I do think Diddy Kong is staying for sure. K. Rool, I'm not too sure about. I really don't think he's going to be sticking around unless he makes a huge revival in the next Donkey Kong Country game or something, but for now I don't think he's making the cut and really kind of stands as a staple for Smash Ultimate era. Unfortunately, I love King K. Rool. I'd love to see him continue in the Smash franchise, but for now he's not going to be making it onto the next roster. Another huge IP to talk about is going to be the Zelda series. So, Zelda herself is going to be making the list, Ganondorf as well. But honestly, I'm just going to leave it there. No other links or no Sheik are going to be making it onto this roster. Sure, Sheik is definitely fun and pretty iconic in Smash, but she's not really relevant to modern Zelda as it stands right now. And I think other characters like Impa or maybe Rauru would be more sufficient replacements for Sheik herself. Again, I don't really want to predict too many new characters coming in. I think reducing the Zelda characters down to the Triforce trio right now makes the most sense. So we're just going to be doing that and leaving it as it is. Speaking of perfect trios, let's go ahead and keep the Kirby series completely as it is right now, with Meta Knight and King Dedede joining Kirby. I think it's just perfect. Let's not overthink it. Let's just have these 3 characters and move on to specifically Metroid. Yes, I think Metroid has been going really steady for Nintendo recently, with of course Metroid Dread and Prime 4 coming relatively soon as well. But with that said, we're going to be bringing back Ridley, and that's it. Dark Samus could be cool with a rework, but we don't really know the future of Dark Samus as a character. And Zero Suit Samus has always been a little bit weird to me because we kind of have Samus and Samus again on the roster. So for now, we're just going to be cutting her, reducing it down to just Samus and Ridley. Okay, now it is Pokemon time. Yeah, this one is very, very hard. First off, we are separating poor Pokemon Trainer once again down to just Charizard. Honestly, I wish we could include Pokemon Trainer as it is, but 3 new characters is a big, heavy number to include for our cut roster here, so we're just going to be keeping Charizard. Along with Charizard, Mewtwo is coming back as well. I know that's a lot of Gen 1, but Mewtwo and Charizard as Pokemon characters are just so iconic that I think they really need to be in Smash. From there, I think we should include 2 more characters, Lucario and Greninja, both extremely popular Pokemon characters that I think deserve to be in Smash as well. And this does mean, of course, we're cutting 2 Pokemon characters besides the Pokemon Trainer characters, Pichu and Incineroar. I think most of us would be okay with that. Incineroar definitely seemed like a weirdish inclusion to me, and I feel like there would be other Pokemon characters that we could include instead. That would be a bit more unique. I do enjoy Incineroar in the Smash roster, but I think if we're going for a pretty revitalized Smash roster here with the Pokemon characters, I think he needs to be cut. So yes, the Pokemon selection roster is definitely a tough thing to talk about, but now we have easily the hardest part of the entire video, the third-party fighters. Some people claim the roster should just drop all third-party characters completely, but I really could not disagree more. Characters like Sonic and Pac-Man are absolutely sticking around. To me, another obvious one, if I was picking from any of these characters, would be Ryu. I'd love to keep all the fighting game representation here with like Ken, Terry, Kazuya, whoever, but if we're cutting down dramatically, I think we have to go with just Ryu, of course. Next up, I'm going to be keeping Cloud, which I was in between either keeping Hero, Sora, or Cloud, but I think Final Fantasy is such a great series to be represented in Smash. I think Cloud is the best choice for a Final Fantasy character to be represented by. So I think we're going to be sticking with him. And yes, some people have mentioned how difficult it apparently was to include Cloud in Smash Ultimate, but we're going to be ignoring the real-life business, negotiation, mumbo-jumbo, third-party nonsense that happens in the real world and go ahead and add Snake as well. Yes, I know Konami and all that is a mess, but if we're talking about Smash legacy characters, I think Snake is a fantastic one. I really think should stick around as he was the first third-party character to be added into Smash completely. He is a super fun, interesting character on the roster as well, so I really want him to stick around. Next up is going to be Banjo. So this one is a bit of a weird one for the third-party characters, as the outcry for Banjo to be added in Smash was absolutely insane, and it just makes a ton of sense for this character to be added. Huge, fantastic representation for the Smash 64 era, and kinda is a huge deal for Nintendo to get on the roster. However, when Banjo was added onto the roster, he's really a niche pick, and people don't really talk about him too often right now, so that really led me to consider cutting him from the roster completely. However, I think that we should keep him. He could benefit very strongly from a rework and a little bit more focus on the character himself. I think his representation of the classic 3D platformer, the Nintendo 64 era, is fantastic, so I think it's a really cool idea to keep Banjo around as well. And of course, that leaves us with just one more character slot to fill on our hypothetical roster here, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this very last pick. I absolutely am. I already know it, so get ready to just type up a huge storm of, feedback here in the comments down below. But the last character I'm going to be including is Steve. Okay, look, first things first, Steve is absolutely going to be getting a nerf going into the next game if he's sticking around. Meta Knight was nerfed insanely hard going into Smash 4, and Bayo was nerfed very hard as well going to Smash Ultimate. I don't think we have to worry about him being broken again going into the next game, so in that case, why don't we include him? He was a huge get for Nintendo, as Minecraft is still the best-selling game of all time. And that's a huge deal, whether you want to admit it or not. That is a huge, huge deal, and I think Steve on the roster is also a very unique fighter that has a lot of fun, interesting things to him. But going into a next Smash game with reworks and nerfs and everything like that, I think he could benefit a lot from that, so he's going to be my last character to pick for the entire Smash 6 hypothetical 44-character roster moving forward. So, boom, there we go, 44-fighter roster going into Smash 6. This video is and was extremely hard to make. So hard, in fact, that I actually finished an entire video of this exact thing, sat there, watched it, and I said, no, this roster sucks. I'm just going to start over. And boom, there you have it. Now we have this one. And it's me from the future saying, oops, it happened again. So yes, I actually did change my opinion on one thing on the roster, taking a seat back, finishing this video, and looking at it again. No dramatic changes here. However, one character I want to swap out for another is going to be Villager for Isabelle. I know that's a bit weird, but I really do think Nintendo is actually looking at Isabelle as a solid mascot for Animal Crossing these days, more so than the, void, empty expression villager that we have. So I think if we're going to cut down to just one of the Animal Crossing characters, I think we're going to go for Isabelle. Also, this changes the way the roster looks a little bit. And I want to know, did you guys catch on to what I'm doing with the roster here? Why it's organized the way it is? And if you did, what point in the video did you discover that or figure that out? So leave a comment down below. So there you go. All right. I'm sorry for interrupting once again and changing the roster, but it had to be done. I feel like it had to be done, or else I would have regretted it. So there we go. That is actually going to be my finalized 44 character roster looking into Smash Bros. 6. Now, what is your guys' roster going to look like? There are a lot of different angles you can take this video. You could just pick your 44 favorite characters. You could pick the 44 characters you think deserve it the most. I kind of went for a little bit of mix of both, focusing on both, character and series representation for Nintendo and third parties, but also trying to keep in mind, unique movesets and things they can kind of do with a character moving forward. So let me know if that works in your guys' opinions, or you hate my roster, whatever, I'm ready for it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe, definitely, for more Smash content for sure whenever this game finally gets announced, and we'll have a lot more to talk about when the game is actually shown to us, hopefully sometime somewhat soon. Thanks for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time, and bye-bye.